Hello, chess friends, and welcome to your of Chess channel, and welcome to another great game of the TCEC Season 23 bonus competition. We have here Stockfish 15 against another top engine Scorpion in a beautiful Makagonov variation of the King's Indian defense. And the Makagonov variation is, in my opinion, one of the best methods to beat the King's Indian defense. So if you have trouble, if you are bothered maybe by the King's Indian itself, because the King's Indian can be really a sharp tactical battle. Black has also some great opportunities to win the game. I think really the Makagonov approach is really cool because it allows you really to launch a flank attack in an early stage of the game. I think you have a decent piece activity, you get some spaces in the center of the board. So as I said, in my opinion, simply one of the best methods against the Kings in defense. So let's see now the game. The game itself was quite spectacular because Stockfish again stayed with the king in the center through the whole game, which is really incredible. It's such a dynamic opening in the King's Indian. Stockfish stayed with the king through the whole game. Be prepared. This is again chess from another dimension. So let's check out now the game. So Stockfish opened with the move d4. Here the Scorpion Engine's response was knight to f6. We have now the move c4, g6, knight to c3, and after bishop to g7, e4, we have now the move d6. And that was now the last prearranged move by the organizer. And I really love the fact that no other moves have been prearranged anymore, because many times an engine has to play really a bad opening line, and then of course the powerful Stockfish engine destroys this dubious opening lines immediately. Now after move d6, nothing spectacular happened so far, so still many opportunities for both sides, and from this point on the engines are calculating now the position for themselves. So after move d6 now comes this Makagonov variation with move h3. I'm telling you that this is now the first move that the Stockfish engine calculated for itself, because I really wanted to see what kind of an approach would Stockfish play against the King's Indian, because I had also my trouble to beat the King's Indian myself. So the h3 approach here, the Makagonov variation, is, in my opinion, as I said in the beginning, one of the best methods. So here kingside castling, now comes bishop to e3, and you see now this move h3 preventing a potential knight to g4 move. And what we're trying to do now from white's perspective is to launch a flank attack with ideas of bishop to e2, g4, f4 if possible, and similar stuff. We're just using now our pawn storm on the king side, and we're trying to launch a flank attack on that side of the board. So in the continuation now, knight to c6 was played by the Scorpion engine. The Scorpion engine is trying some kind of an idea like in the classical orthodox systems of the King's Indian, is trying to break and enter with the move e5, and then if white advances to pawn to d5, to get the knight, to reshift the knight on e7, and then to launch the flank attack like black usually does in the King's Indian with the move f5. So it's an idea, but after move knight to c6, Stockfish is not allowing this e5 approach, plays now d5 immediately, kicks away the knight, so you expose your knight. Now I'm using a tempo against the knight. In the continuation we have now knight to e5, and Stockfish continues the pressure with the move f4. Knight to d7 was played by Scorpion. We have now g4. Stockfish is storming now with the pawns. Really already an unpleasant game here for black. And here we have c6, because you have to break the position somewhere. You cannot tolerate, of course, such a devastating pawn storm. You have to break the pawn chain somewhere, and of course the pawn chain is best to be broken somewhere in the center of the board. So that's why c6 makes really sense here by black. So Stockfish continues with development. Knight to f3. We have now c takes d5, and of course you have to play now c takes d5. E takes d5 is not so good, because I think in this scenario you would lose your main strength. You're losing your pawn chain. And look at this with rook to e8. Notice that now the e file is open. You could have some tactical problems, but also if rook to c8 happens, notice that there is now this c4 backward pawn, so it could be also an object of black's attack. You can of course improve it by playing the move b3, but of course it liberates then the long diagonal for the dark square bishop. So it's very important to know what's going on now here. That's why after c takes d5 you have to play c takes d5, keeping now your pawn chain and keeping your flexibility here now on the king side. So in the continuation we have now b6, preparing now the move bishop to b7, developing the light square bishop somewhere. But now knight to d4 played immediately by Stockfish, using now this weak c6 square in order to attack the position further. But we have now knight to c5, hitting the pawn on e4, knight to c6, a beautiful counter attack here by Stockfish 15, and now we have queen to c7, protecting also here the weak e7 pawn. Now comes what is, in my opinion, the critical moment already in the game. Maybe you can pause the video and try to see some kind of an idea. Try to see here for yourself maybe an attacking approach. What would you do here in this particular position? Because we have to agree, I think. The e4 is weak. You have a king in the center. You haven't developed your light square bishop. Your rooks are not playing the game. You have a decent activity with both of these knights. This bishop is very powerful. It's, of course, perfectly fine. But what is the actual goal here in White's position? And it's really wild what Stockfish is doing now here when you think about it harder, because Stockfish with the king in the center is opening now the center with the move e5. This is really sick, brutal chess. Really incredible stuff what Stockfish is doing here, because look at this. After d takes e5, we have here f takes e5, and now you could maybe, instead of this d takes e5 move, you could maybe play knight to e8. You don't have to maybe react here. Let's see what happens if you don't play d takes e5, if you retreat with the knight to e8. Then the problem is this one. You have b4. First, you're kicking away this knight from the c5. Now the knight can maybe come to a6 and attacking the b4 pawn, but now White continues the pressure with knight to b5. The queen has to step back, and look at this now. With rook to c1, we are supporting further the knight on c6, and now after something like bishop to b7, notice that the knight is attacked. Nothing spectacular, because still we have opportunities to cement our position around the square c6, and now after something like, I don't know, d takes e5, here f takes e5. The problem is now you cannot take out the pawn on d5 because you get the royal fork here on e7. So you see, with this e5 move and with the preparation to play knight to b5, here black is already facing several tactical problems. In the continuation, the Scorpion engine tried this approach, d takes e5 instead of knight to e8, but Stockfish continues to pressure. F takes e5, now knight to e4. The Scorpion engine is now using this square in order to make further progress in the game. In the continuation, we have now knight takes e4, knight takes e4, and now bishop to g2, hitting the knight now on e4. And notice, okay, black is challenged now by the bishop, but the downside, I think, for white, at least a little bit here in this position, is that you have a weak e5 pawn. That's now the main issue here. We have to think also about black's possibilities, because the king is still stuck in the center. Really wild stuff how the fish is playing the game. So in the continuation, f5 was played by the Scorpion engine, cementing the position around the square e4. We have now queen to d4. Finally, Stockfish protects the pawn on e5, but now comes e6. A very important move for black. Black is trying to deflect the pawn from the knight on c6 and is trying to get rid of this annoying knight, which is very powerful here on the square c6. So here in the continuation, we have now g takes f5, g takes f5 by Scorpion, bishop to e4. We have f takes e4, and now a very important move by Stockfish, rook to g1. Many of us would make the mistake here, maybe would take out just a pawn here on e4, but I think with the king in the center like this, it's not time to grab some pawns. It's time to get your pieces into the game. It's time to activate all of your pieces, because as we said in the beginning, your rooks haven't played so far in the game. Now if you just pick up the pawn, you're getting destroyed by this activity. E takes d5, queen to d5. Okay, even this comes with a check, but now the king hides on h8, and notice now with the move bishop to b7, you're facing several really light square problems here. The queen is lined up on the long diagonal, the knight on c6 is on the light square, the rook on h1 is on the light square. Where should you castle? This is not a possibility, queenside castling, because you're getting probably destroyed on the c file. Notice that the queen is also on the c file. The bishop will come into the game. So as I said, it's simply not time to grab one pawn. That's why after f takes e4, Stockfish played first rook to g1, and it's now threatening some wild ideas. If something gets cleared, then of course you could be vulnerable here around the square g7. So in the continuation, king to h8 was played. Now rook to c1, finally protecting also this powerful knight on c6. And with this move, rook to c1, actually Stockfish is saying, I cannot castle anymore. My king is stuck now in e1. Maybe there was an opportunity to castle, but now it's obvious when you play with both of your rooks, the king will stay here now on the e1 square. Look how wild really this position is. It's so dynamic, it's so open, and still Stockfish is staying with the king in the center. Really wild stuff. So in the continuation, we have now e takes d5, and now Stockfish plays a brilliant move. Here we have knight to b4, simply attacking the queen. Instead of this move, let's so let's go. It's here instead of this move king to h8, you could maybe try here e takes d5. You can maybe take out the pawn, but I wanted to show you this possibility from a different perspective. As we said, this move rook to g1 was so important that Stockfish played. Now you could face this one, bishop to h6. That's why this move king to h8 was very necessary. You can maybe try even this one, queen to c6, but look at this. Now with e6, you're getting destroyed here for sure. There's not a good way anymore to protect now this bishop on g7. So that's why, as we said, king to h8 first instead of here this move e takes d5. So after king to h8, as we said, rook to c1, here played by Stockfish 15. We have now e takes d5, and now knight to b4 hitting the queen. The queen has to step back here to e7, and now knight to d5 comes in a different way. Really good move here by Stockfish. Attacks also the queen, and the queen is of course the key protector of the bishop on g7. So here Scorpion tried queen to h4. That was the only way somehow to prolong the game. This check makes very sense, because instead of this move, if you play something like queen to e5, this is not good, because as we said, you get a little bit overloaded here around the square g7. We have here this one, rook takes g7. If you play queen to g7, then rook to c7 is going to happen. Now the queen has to take out the queen, and after bishop to d4, actually you're getting checkmated with a beautiful windmill tactic. Now after rook to g1, you can just maybe cover with your rook, but with bishop to f6, the game should be over. So as I said, see, this tension around the square g7 is causing really black some tactical problems. Here in the continuation, queen to h4 was played by the Scorpion engine, but now after bishop to f2, here the Scorpion engine tried somehow to simplify the game by trading off more material. Rook to f2, queen to f2, queen takes f2, king takes f2, and now bishop to e5. Here the Scorpion engine forced this tactical sequence, is now continuing with a situation where black is down the exchange, but has at least the bishop pair, and has at least also this extra pawn. Maybe if you play this game in 100% correct way, maybe you can force a draw out of this. But Stockfish is Stockfish, of course. Stockfish plays now the most accurate moves, plays now simply king to e3, gets now finally the king closer. You see the king hasn't castled, the king was never secured by castling in this particular game. Now of course, when we reach the endgame stage, the king can play much more active, and now here Stockfish continues with the pressure against the pawn on e4. So bishop to h3, another pawn grabbed here by the Scorpion engine. But of course, this move king to e3 was very important, because now Stockfish uses the spaces, is trying now to get the rooks into the game. We have rook to d8, we have rook to d1, rook to f8. The Scorpion engine is trying for opportunities to maybe deliver some checks here on f4, f3, and similar stuff. We have here now rook to g5 hitting the bishop, bishop to g7, and now knight to f4 hitting also now the bishop on h3, bishop to c8, rook to d6, bishop to b2. Here the Scorpion engine is trying to place an annoying check here with bishop to c1, so that's why rook to c6, very important to control the c1 square. Bishop to f5, and now rook to h5, also very important. First of all, there is this threat rook to c7, and if the bishop moves, then maybe you could even face some checkmate threats on the 7th rank by both of these rooks. So that's why very important now to keep both of these rooks active in the game. So bishop to a3 hitting the pawn on b4. We have now rook to c7 by Stockfish 15. In the continuation, we have king to g8 by the Scorpion engine. If you play here bishop to b4, this wouldn't be good, because you get this one, knight to e6, you get the attack against the rook. And if you play something like rook to e8, then of course we have rook to f5 and lose simply the piece. If you, for instance, try here bishop to e6, then you get checkmated. As we said, after bishop to e6, rook to h7, king to g8, and now rook to g7 leads into a beautiful checkmate pattern here. So this is something that I think we should also consider when we watch now this position. Black has some chances, but has to be also careful because of this checkmate threat. So here in continuation, as we said, instead of bishop to b4, Scorpion played king to g8. We have now knight to d5, trying a fork on e7. We have now bishop to g6, and now finally knight to e7. It's working, king to g8, and now knight takes g6, h takes g6, and rook to b5 protects now, at least for a while, this weak pawn on b4. And this is the way to go. Whenever you are playing this kind of an endgame where you have two rooks and a knight against a rook and two bishops, you have to get rid of at least one of these bishops. You cannot tolerate both of them in such an open battle. It was a good choice for Stockfish to find this tactical sequence that led into at least trade of this knight for at least one bishop. Now it's a different story. When there's only one bishop and a rook, it's not such a complicated game anymore. Now, of course, white has a good game here. So rook to f5, rook takes f5, king to f5, we have rook to c4, a5, b takes a5, we have b takes a5, and now rook to e4. Mission accomplished, I think. At least Stockfish grabbed one pawn, and also these pawns are too far away from each other. If these two pawns would be somehow connected, and with the bishop, maybe this could be a draw. But now, when they're simply too stretched all over the board, then of course the rook is a long-range piece, will simply attack both of these pawns. So in the continuation, we have bishop to b4, king to d3, king to h5, king to e3, we have bishop to c5, king to f3, now bishop to b4, rook to h4, hitting now the pawn, we have now rook to d4, we have king to f7, rook to d5, we have now h4, king, rook to h5, and now bishop to e1. Here the Scorpion engine is trying to somehow keep the bishops glued together for both of these pawns, but it's not working because now the king is of course getting closer and closer. Stockfish delivers an annoying check. We have king to e8, king to e6. There is also always the threat of rook to h8 delivering checkmate, so you have to step back here. King to d8, rook to d7, king to d6. Now after a couple of checks, rook to b7, we have king to a8, king to b6. Now after a couple of checks, the king gets cornered here to a6, and there is now always, as we said, the threat to play something like rook to h7 and then rook to h8, maybe delivering a checkmate. So we have now a4, we have rook to f7, trying again a checkmate. We have now bishop to g3. Stockfish delivers now a check. You have to cover now with bishop to b8, and now after rook to h8, a beautiful Zugzwang position where you have to play now a move with your pawn. In the continuation, we have now a3, we have now king to b6, again a Zugzwang position. You have to play another pawn move now after rook h3 and rook to h3. In this position, actually, the Scorpion engine resigned. Okay, let's see the possible continuation. Probably you will play now the move bishop to d6, staying connected to your pawn here on a3, but now you just deliver another check after bishop to b8. Now play rook to h5, again sort of a Zugzwang position. Again, you're forcing your opponent to make a move. Now you play rook to h3. Now the bishop has to step back here from the defense of the pawn, and now we can pick up the pawn, and this should be of course completely winning here for white. So great game by Stockfish. You see how Stockfish is performing against these wild openings, like the king's in and stayed simply with the king in the center, provoked really some wild ideas in the middle of the game. Really wild stuff how Stockfish controlled all of this possible attacks by black, cemented the knight on c6, created this breakthrough with the move e5, never kept, I think, never gave any chances here for black. Really brilliant game here, again played by the fish. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed the game. If you want to see more brutal tactical game like this, check out my Common Chess Games Played by Computer series. Here's the link. We have here more than 370 videos about some top engine games. Check it out, have fun while analyzing really the most epic games in chess history. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.